sees the hardship. Like you're saying about like the flight delays and everything else.
Everyone thinks it's all smooth.
It's hard because when your flight's delayed just for a holiday, you're annoyed.
Oh yeah.
But when you're basically being denied recovery, it's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
And I've had people say to me like, yo, you get flown out sometimes the day before the meet, sometimes on the day of that meet.
Yeah.
So you don't have time to acclimatize. You don't have time to get yourself ready.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's literally you get your bags to the hotel room.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, oh, hi sir, yeah, the minibus is outside to take you to the track.
Yeah.
So some of those performances that you see that aren't good, there is a lot of reason behind it.
Yeah, absolutely bang on. And there's so many stories that I could tell you. I remember one time I was getting ready for the Oslo Diamond League 200. I ended up running really well. I ran 20:52 into like a minus 1.8 and it was freezing. I had lane 8 and I think I just got beat by Lemaitre and Drobadouane, went on to win a bronze in the world that year, but it was a good run. But I remember the day before I had a flight and my gap between the flights was about 50 minutes in Amsterdam. So I went from Teesside Airport to Amsterdam to Oslo.
Yeah.
And I remember there was queues and I literally had 5 minutes to get from like terminal E to D or something like that. And it was about a mile and I had my hand luggage and they were calling, they said, Mr. Kilty to the thing. I swear down, I had to run flat out. It must have been 800 metres. I made it to the gate. The lactic acid I had was incredible. I felt like I was going to vomit on the plane. I got onto the plane and the people must have been looking at me thinking, what's wrong with this guy? I was sweating. I was keeled over in my seat, breathing hard, and the people were looking at me like, what's wrong with this guy? He's crazy. And then the next day, got to bed, woke up, done the Diamond League 200, and most of the time the competitions, they do look after you, and you do the hotels are usually always amazing, food's usually amazing, it's usually simple, plain sailing, but there is times where things become difficult. I remember the first time, my first indoor meeting in 2016, it was a small one which Alphonse got me into before my success, and I remember getting into Paris airport, flight delays. Then I missed the next one, had to wait on hold for the next one, got into the airport at like midnight. I thought, right, finally got there, and then the driver said, right, it's a 3-hour drive to I think it was to Mondeville in France, and I was like, wow. Not only that, he said, we're still waiting on another 3 athletes, we need to pick them up from the terminal. We were driving around, their flights got delayed, so we were stuck in this little tight minibus for another hour or two in the airport, then a 3-hour drive. You get there 4 o'clock in the morning, you're sharing with athletes that you don't know, and you're like, oh, this is a nightmare. Then you have to race. Another time in Gavado, it was actually when I ran the Windy 992. Yeah. Gavado is quite a small town, and the meeting, although it's a really top meeting, it probably doesn't have, as much money as some meetings. So we stayed in a family-run hotel, and I arrived in the hotel, and I got to the room, and I went in, and there was a double bed which had like a metal cage around it, and then there was a single bed, and I looked, and Arthur Delaney from America, who I was racing against, was in the single bed, and Pavel Maslak was in the double bed. I was looking, thinking, it's not quite adding up here. So I went down to Alberto, who was the meeting director, and I said, Alberto,
there's 2 guys in my room.
And he looks at me and he goes, I'm not the hotel of the manager. I'm not the manager of the hotel. And I thought, what am I going to do? Like, what do we do? So me and Pavel Maslak are asleep, in this thing. I remember rolling over a few times a night, bumping into him, waking up, and we're just looking at each other, laughing, thinking, this is crazy. There was nothing we could do. We couldn't have slept on the floor because it was one of the, the marble floors. Yeah. And it was absolutely crazy. And then I like to have a nap on race day, but you can't have a nap because there's 2 of us, and it was weird. And Maslak will tell you that was funny, and it's so sharing a bed at times, there's most athletes have got a funny story, but sometimes it's not all as plain sailing as you think. The amount of flights that get delayed and this and that, and the travelling does tire you out. Sometimes it's not just one flight direct in. The closest airport to the competition could be 2 hours away, so you find yourself usually travelling for about 12 hours. By the time I drive from my house to Newcastle airport, it's an hour. Then you're waiting in the airport, an hour flight to Amsterdam, then maybe a 2-hour flight from Amsterdam to wherever you're going, then another 2-hour drive to wherever the city is that you're competing in. Then your back gets stiff, you need physio, and then you've got to race the next day. So sometimes it is tough, and the younger athletes that are coming through, I would give them the advice to just try and not stress about it, because the more you stress about your own control, just make sure you got plenty of water, take your stuff for recovery, keep moving between flights, and don't get too stressed out about it, because sometimes you can't control it, and understand that most of the people have been in the same boat at some point. When I'm stepping there, 30 bottles of Zoom till I'm sentimental. I had to